think that we should be live now, which means everyone should be able to see what we can say. So, hello to everyone that's here. Welcome. Thank you for joining us. We are just going to give it a few minutes to let people join the channel, get themselves settled. But whilst people are doing that, people will be able to drop in and out as they wish. So that means that people might take a little bit of time to join. I just wanted to say thank you to everybody. Thank you so much for coming and joining us today. We are really excited to do this. It's super fun for us, especially me, because I love video games. I always have done, and so for me it's just brilliant. But I just wanted to do a very quick intro for you guys about like what it is that we're doing and why we decided to do it. So this is a project that we've started to do called Playing in the Past, and it is supposed to look at digital reconstructions of past worlds. Okay, we have someone who is saying that they can barely hear us. Okay, we thought that might be a problem. Kate,
I wonder, can they hear? Yeah, can you hear me? Is that better?
We'll just see who's loud and who's not. Okay, so it's my audio that's the problem. In which case, I just wanna. Why don't I just ask Kate and Chris to explain how the project came about while I sort out my audio. So, how did we start this project?
I'll let Chris go on that
one. Oh, thanks very much. Maybe if anybody's having trouble hearing me, they could say so in the chat, and then I can let Kate talk. So how did this start? I guess maybe it's my fault. I was working on something to do with Cleopatra not long ago, a secret project that I'm not going to tell anyone about for a while. But anyway, to do with Cleopatra and to do with Alexandria. And for this project, I needed visualizations of Alexandria. And I was aware, being old school, of Jean-Claude Golvin's reconstruction drawings of ancient archaeological sites, including Egyptian sites, which were published in the Egypte Restituée volumes in the 1980s, I think. But anyway, I was kind of looking for these online because I didn't have the books to hand. And a lot of what I was seeing when I was looking for reconstructions of Alexandria online turned out to be images from the video game Assassin's Creed Origins. I'm not maybe too old to play video games. Maybe I am a bit too old to play video games, but also even when I did play them in my younger days, I was terrible at them. So I'm absolutely not a gamer, but I got kind of obsessed with the idea that I wanted to be able to walk around in Alexandria as per Assassin's Creed. And so I did what I often do in these sorts of situations, which is sort of stew on it for a couple of weeks. And then eventually this boiled over and I posted a kind of help me, SOS kind of tweet saying, I don't know anything about video games, but I want to play this video game. I'm on a Mac, and I'm old school. I read books and things like that. How can I do this? Help. And a number of people, but Gemma in particular, who is the perfect combination of Egyptologist and archaeologist and also video game enthusiast and expert, said, well, I've got this game and I could just show you around. And I didn't ask any more questions. I just said, yes, make it happen, or something like that anyway. And so privately, Gemma and Kate, who had also got roped into this Twitter thread.
I used my elbows, remember? I just said, I want to come.
Kate elbowed away from my door. And anyway, the three of us had a great time exploring. And I think Kate was too, although I should let Kate say this. I think we were both completely bowled over with how good it is and how immersive it is. To the extent that, one, I went out and bought an Xbox and the game so that I could start doing it myself. And I remain terrible at video games, but it turns out you can just walk around and fire arrows at animals. So I've been enjoying doing that for a while. But more importantly, too, between us, but with Gemma taking the lead, we decided that we would invite other people to join at all.
Oh, looks like we have lost Chris.
That came about.
Oh no,
There we go.
There we go. Lost you a little bit there, Chris. On the, can you guys hear me now? Is that better, or am I still really quiet for you?
While we get some comment back on that, I do want to say, yeah, we loved it. We said we want to get other people in on the tour, and for me, I'm an Egyptologist by training, but I'm also a historian of science. So I do history of Egyptology. And like Gemma had written in a tweet, I think earlier this week or last week, that what I spend a lot of time doing is looking at historical maps of these places that we're going to be. And they look great on paper, but like Chris, I want to walk around in these places where people have been and see the things that they have been seeing. And so we started, yeah, this was kind of the impetus for the tour. And I will just say, and I'll probably say it again through the tour, what I love are the small details. The look at the road and the dirt and the, how they paved through the stones, and all that kind of stuff. And I love it. It reminds me of Egypt. And I was telling you all before we sort of got on here that 5 years ago I was in Egypt and I was on the Giza Plateau. So it's like going back virtually, and it's super fun, and it's going to be great.
I hope so. Okay, right. Now that everyone, I think, can hear me, I just wanted to quickly say something before we go into the game, which is a couple of things. That the chat is going to remain open. So when you're on Zoom, you go into Zoom lectures. Often they will close the chat for the lecture. That's not what we're going to do here. We're going to leave the chat open because we want you guys to ask us questions and we want you to engage with what we're doing so that we can make it more interesting and immersive for you as well as us. Because we can quite happily just go around going, this thing is awesome. Oh my god, I love this thing. Look how exciting this thing is, and we are happy. But what I really wanted was for you guys to be a part of it as well, so that you get to ask things that you want to ask, and we will do our very best to engage with those during the. I'm still really quiet apparently. We'll do our best to engage with them whilst we are actually online. Okay, and then the second thing, Mark, could you explain how they can do the questions? Because I'm really quiet apparently, so I need someone else to do it.
Yeah, so if you have any questions about anything that Chris, Kate, or Gemma are saying at any point, if you can hear them, just put it in the chat and tag Gemma, so put @muty, and I'll collate all of those and I'll ask them to make sure we get answers to those at every possible opportunity. Feel free to ask any other questions in the chat. I'll answer them via that. Gemma's demonstrate there. I'll answer them if they're just technical questions. And if they're just general questions about Egyptology or about the game or about anything like this, put them in the chat. I'll keep them and we'll ask them at the end and get Gemma and Chris and Kate to go through all of them.
All right, brilliant.
Should we say something also about the slight delay in streaming versus what Chris and Mark and I can see, Gemma?
Okay, so the delay is from me to you guys, because you guys are watching the stream the same as all the other people watching the stream. It's only me that sees it differently. So I might be in a slightly different place, but it shouldn't be too much of a problem. If I start talking about something and we're not there, it doesn't seem like I'm talking about what we're looking at, it's probably just because you're yet to catch up with where I am. That's all. Okay?
Yep.
And then the one last thing, which I think you will all understand and be very kind of receptive to, is the fact that we are all at home Therefore, we are all on our own internets and using our own equipment. I don't have a full-on setup for doing streaming, so this is relying on my trusty computer to broadcast all of this to you guys. So hopefully it's going to be fine. I just want to let you know, though, that my electricity did go off about 20 minutes before starting the broadcast. Panic attack, because I was just like, okay, that's good. That never happens. Why is this happening now? I really hope that won't happen, but if everything switches off, it's probably because of that, because you are seeing everything broadcast through me. So if anything happens to my electricity or my internet, it's just going to switch off. But I think everybody understands and this. I just wanted to make sure that everyone knows that I didn't just go bored. I would never do that. Okay, so I'm going to load us into the game now, and we can begin, which is exciting. It might take a minute to load. One of the interesting things while it is loading, it has these little it says that they're hints. It says cycle hints, and you can go through them and see all the different things. But in the discovery mode, which is the non-game mode, which is the mode we will be in, so you've got the game mode, and then you've got the discovery mode, which is meant to be an educational kind of museum mode, so you can go and visit the places without having to actually do the story and actually play the game. But yeah, it gives you kind of little bits of information about what you're looking at and the places that you're in, and just like little facts about Egypt. And one of the funny things for me was that while I was loading into Alexandria one time, it told me about the Honor Frost Foundation, which is something at Southampton University to do with the maritime archaeologists there, which I didn't know about until I started going to Southampton Uni, and I was like, oh, Honor Frost, that's interesting. So they are quite interesting, those little facts, and they're also very varied what it tells you. Some of it's about ancient Egypt, some of it's about the kind of sources that we have and other things. So they're quite good. They've gone to a lot of effort to sort of try and ensure that there's variety in there. All right, I'm gonna
Gemma.
Yeah.
Oh, I would say people are still having a hard time hearing you.
Okay.
So I don't know what we can do about that, but I can try to help narrate some of these things. Gemma's gonna start climbing the what is it? The lighthouse. That's where we're gonna start. She is an expert climber. She's gonna do this a few times today, I think. Chris, what do you want to say about the lighthouse?
Well, I suppose just a lot of the things in the game, including the lighthouse, are based on fairly patchy evidence. So people will be aware of the lighthouse, one of the 7 great wonders of the ancient world. Some of the masonry of the lighthouse still exists. It was used in the construction of the fortress of Kite Bay, which is still on Pharos Island. We don't exactly know what the lighthouse looked like, but we do have a number of pictorial records and descriptions, and the lighthouse and most of the other major monuments that are in the game are based on what evidence of that kind we have. So for people who have seen visualizations of the lighthouse in the past, they will, once we get a chance to zoom out and see it from a distance, you will certainly recognize it. The lighthouse actually is probably about the best attested of all the monuments that don't still exist to any great extent in Alexandria. So in this case, I suppose we might be slightly more sure that the way it appears in the game is the way it would have appeared in ancient times. In the case of some of the other buildings, which we know must have existed and are attested in, for example, textual records, we are much more kind of guessing about what they look like.
Yeah.
But still, I think this applies to the sort of the whole game. and we've talked about this often in the last few weeks as we've been preparing for today. The designers of the game do seem to have been incredibly diligent in making use of whatever information was available. So we can't in all cases say everything is 100% accurate, as it were, because there are such gaps in our knowledge. But they have been, like I say, incredibly diligent in doing as good as possible a job of creating an environment that is accurately reflects what was really there, while also, of course, making compromises so that the game works. So a good example, which you may already have seen, is that the pyramids of Giza are very visible on the horizon. In reality, of course, they're much too far away, even for somebody who, in the late Ptolemaic, has just climbed up the side of the lighthouse in a few seconds. You have really seen. And the mountain range that you can see off to the east isn't really there. So some artistic license has been allowed here, but still, even for a sort of Egyptological pedant, there's not much to complain about here, really.
Yeah, I mean, I know they can't really hear me, Chris, but do you wanna just describe for us maybe then what we can see from this view? So I've stayed still now, so you can see I'm still looking out slightly to the east across that bay, so you can see the palace, and we'll start there, and I will pan the camera around, and you can describe to everyone what we're actually looking at.
Okay, great. So the lighthouse, many of you will know, is built on an island just off the coast of mainland Egypt, just off the coast where the main part of the city is built. The island was called Pharos, and it was connected to the mainland by an artificial causeway of 7 stadia in length, hence the name Heptastadion, which we will see. So we are now on the island, looking back towards the shore, towards the city, and the harbour that lies in between Pharos Island and the shore to the east of the Heptastadion. So that's the left side of the Heptastadion as we look. We're looking south towards the pyramid. This is the great harbour, the Portus Magnus, the sort of centre, if you like, of Alexandria. There is another small island, which was likened to the island of Rhodes in front of us, Antirodos. Over in the corner, as it were, over to the left is a royal sort of miniature harbour, with the royal palace beyond. And as far as our knowledge goes, the majority of the main state royal buildings, so palace, quite possibly library, royal tomb, etc., those buildings are all clustered in this area along the shoreline. This is also where the Caesareum, the Caesarium, a temple erected in honor of Julius Caesar, was built along the shoreline here. And at the front of that temple is where the 2 obelisks, which we now call the Cleopatra's Needles, were placed. And they really were. They're among the few bits of archaeological evidence we have. So that's kind of, as we sort of face the shoreline, if you like, that's what we're seeing at the water's edge, and in particular with the royal palace off to the left.
Lovely, thank you, Chris. I've just noticed that the sun is setting, but it's also getting kind of hazy. I think there's actually going to be an in-game sandstorm shortly.
Oh,
which
wow.
you guys have never seen.
No.
Okay,
can I just ask Chris and Kate, when Gemma asks a question, just clarify it so that people who can't hear Gemma know what's going on.
Yes, sure.
Okay.
Yes.
Lovely.
Absolutely. Are we ready to jump off, or what are...
I have just gone into the eagle view so that we can get a little view of the lighthouse, but then
Oh yeah.
you can see that, and then after that I will jump down. And just for a warning for anyone, it is high. I am going to jump off it. Don't be scared. We aren't going to get hurt, I promise.
Yeah, we're gonna jump off, and it's quite a dive down to the hay. So, but there's no fighting. There's no blood. Everything's gonna be fine. There's the lighthouse on fire. That's awesome.
We have good descriptions of that, with the beacon of fire at the top, and this sort of approximately octagonal shape with a rounded shape at the top. There are good descriptions of that.
Nice.
So in the game, Chris, what we're looking at now, the Romans have turned this lighthouse into a kind of little fort. What do you think about that? Likely?
Not. So the question is, in the game, the Romans have turned the lighthouse into a kind of a fortress. How likely is that? The Romans were not afraid to appropriate monumental buildings, important spaces for military camps. So a good example is the Luxor Temple, which became a Roman military camp. I don't know what the evidence for that is, but it doesn't seem impossible at all.
Excellent, thank you. I just wondered, that was not a test. I just suddenly thought, how likely is this that they might have done something like this? It's very beautiful though, it's very exciting to be seeing this.
So we're headed toward the Heptastadion, right? Oh, sorry.
No, you're absolutely right, Kate. Yeah, yes. So heading back to the shore, yes, via this artificial causeway, the Heptastadion.
And what's the significance of this? Was it just functional because the land was separate at the time in ancient times?
Yes, as far as I know, yes. The Heptastadion is purely there to connect the Pharos Island and the mainland. One of my sort of favourite facts about Alexandria is that the Heptastadion over the centuries caused a massive silting up in this area. So what you see here in the game as essentially a sort of a bridge, not much wider than a couple of chariots, is now a good maybe kilometre or two across, and is one of the most densely built up parts of Alexandria now. So if you look at a satellite image or a map of Alexandria now, what used to be this little bridge is now a giant area of buildings of all kinds, fish markets, fishmongers in particular, clustered in this area. And what was an island,
take your time,
is now
I'll
absolutely
wait.
not.
It's not like ancient Egypt is going anywhere.
That it wasn't disconnected from the mainland.
And they also help to it breaks up the Mediterranean from the port of Alexandria, right? Because the Mediterranean is actually pretty volatile. There are all of these stories of people traveling across from Italy into Alexandria, especially in the 19th century. They're just like, we got tossed around, we were all very sick, and we just couldn't wait to reach the harbor. And so they use this land, this built up, silted up area to sort of as a breakers, right?
Whoa.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, so once they'd created the Heptastadion, the Great Harbour was protected almost on four sides. Obviously by the shoreline to the south, by the Heptastadion to the west, by another natural little spur of rock, the Acrolochias to the east, which is where the Great Palace is built, and then the Pharos to the north. Yeah, so you're absolutely right. Yeah, it's kind of a natural barrier.
Nice. We're gonna take a boat ride now to the Egyptian part of town. Is that where we are, Gemma?
Yeah, we are. We are not going to be able to get on the boat though because he is no longer here. I do not know why. So we're going to swim. But it's fine because Bayek is a good swimmer. So it's not a
problem. Oh, good.
It just takes slightly longer than taking the boat ride. We are arriving at the Egyptian part of town now. Well, there are actually two. There's one on this side and one on the other side of town. They're completely separate from the rest of the town.
So we're just hitting one part of the Egyptian part of town, and then so they're separated by the Roman stuff, I'm guessing.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay.
They are. So there's one next to the canal that's on this west side, and then the other one is next to the. I think that is actually supposed to be a canal, but it doesn't go all the way through on this. I have a feeling when I looked at maps of this, that the one on the right-hand side of the map I'm currently looking at was also a canal. But it seems to be like this little inlet, but there's another little bit of Egyptian town there as well.
Okay, the Egyptian town over there.
Yeah.
And interesting about the map too is last time we met, we sort of were wondering what the game designers based this on, what map it was based on, and sort of what's going on in the city. And we decided that it was probably based on Strabo's map because we looked it up in a Baedeker and from 1895, and they were looking. They had an ancient map based on Strabo, and then they had a current map, and so you could see the difference. And so that's kind of what we figured out there.
Kate, can you explain who Strabo is for anyone who might not know?
Yeah. Oh, sorry. Strabo was a Greek, I think, historian and traveler. And Chris, correct me if I'm wrong. Did he actually make it to Egypt, or did he just count on other people to tell him about it? Because I know that.
Go on.
Sorry. Go ahead. Oh, I was just going to say, I know that in a lot of early Egyptological site reports, late 19th, early 20th century, all they had to go on were Greek and Roman historians like Strabo and Herodotus and the Bible for sort of their literature review, if you will. Like, here's what this site was 2,000 years ago, and now we're going to talk about it now. So I don't know if some of those, historians never actually went there, but sometimes they did.
In the case of Strabo, he did.
Okay.
Yeah, and he was he was a historian of sorts, but principally a geographer. And so described a lot of the known world. But yeah, he seems to have visited Egypt. It's not entirely clear, but it is almost exactly at this point, actually, just slightly later. I'm not sure we've said this yet, but the game is designed as if we were in the very late in the time of Cleopatra, the last of the Ptolemies, the last to reign before Egypt was absorbed into the Roman Empire under the first emperor, Octavian, Augustus Caesar. And Strabo was writing just shortly after that, and his descriptions of sites, not only in the northern part of Egypt, but up the Nile Valley as well, are about as detailed as we have from any classical writer. He also wrote about Ethiopia, by which I mean ancient Ethiopia, the lands to the south of Egypt. I don't think he got there, but I'm not absolutely sure about that. But certainly he was in Alexandria. Yeah.
Cool.
We've got some love for Baedeker in the chat.
Always. Always. I depend on Baedeker. So we're going through the Egyptian part of town, and now we're on our way to the Serapeum.
That is right. I took a nice slow stroll through the Egyptian part of town while you guys were talking, so that the viewers could see what it was like, so that we can compare it to walking through the rest of the town later on.
Okay, so a slow stroll through the Egyptian part of town, so we can compare it to the Roman stuff.
That's right.
I'm just repeating you, Gemma.
No, that's fine. That's fine. Do that. Make sure that everyone can hear. I just wanted to give my love to the comments from this person whose name I can't actually read because I'm blind. It says who's put more like Baedeker. Bay.
This is true. Yes, more like Baedeker.
I like that comment. Anyway, we have arrived at the Serapeum.
Chris, you're on.
Okay. So, as Gemma has just said, we have just arrived at the Serapeum. So this is the Alexandrian Serapeum, which is the temple of Serapis, this new hybrid god, who's the kind of combination of the Egyptian gods Osiris and Apis, and the Greek god Zeus. So this would have been the principal temple for this new population of Greeks in Egypt, Greek settlers in Egypt, and indeed a new god for a kind of new hybrid religion for this hybrid Greek-Egyptian world of the Ptolemaic period. The Serapeum is still standing. You can go and visit it today. The most substantial, striking part of the temple today is what's called Pompey's Pillar, colloquially, actually an enormous red granite column erected by the Emperor Diocletian, but that would have been a few centuries after this time, so the pillar's not there. We are, as you can see now, before an image of a very classical Hellenistic-looking god. This is Serapis, shown with this very bushy, impressive beard. It's the god of the Ptolemies. And yes, so this is one building for which there are, although there's not a huge amount to see now, still substantial standing remains, and it was built deliberately on a kind of rocky area of higher ground, so as to stand out, as you might expect, its location today matches the location in the Assassin's Creed city as well. All of the details that we see here, and Kate mentioned earlier, just kind of how incredibly detailed the game is. So, down to sort of things like weeds growing out of the pavement and cracks in the stonework, things like candles, incense, a rug on a marble floor, the decoration in the background, the grills over the windows. This will all be based on the sort of best guesses rather than actual evidence. But the image of the statue of Serapis certainly matches the statues that we have. The iconography is right. The colours, there's good evidence for the colouring. So this isn't all based on something that we know absolutely for sure would have been there, but it's a good start.
Can we? Sorry, I just
Gemma,
wanted
go
to
ahead.
ask Chris about this statue, because he seems to have Cerberus with him. So does he have an association with Hades as well?
Oh.
So the question is, Gemma rightly points out that Serapis appears here with the three-headed dog Cerberus, and the question is this right? Is that how things would have appeared? This is not a great answer, I'm afraid, but I don't really know.
That's okay, I don't know either.
I don't know of there being an association. I would have, from a sort of Egyptian myth and religion focused point of view, you might expect more Apis bull type iconography here. Maybe that crops up elsewhere in the building. I'm not aware of that association.
There's a suggestion in the chat that maybe it's Fluffy rather than Cerberus.
Yes, I saw that. I also wonder though, is that because there's a giant black basalt Apis bull in the Greco-Roman Museum now, and it was a huge deal when it was found back in the, I don't know, everything I do is late 19th, early 20th century, so that's what I'm going to say. But it was a huge deal, and it was really important in terms of bringing visitors to Alexandria to see this, but also in terms of centralizing Greco-Roman archaeology in Egypt. So is that here, or are we too early for that bull?
Whoa.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I do. I'm not absolutely sure, but
so many tours, so little
by
time.
this point, the cult of the Apis bull elsewhere in the country, at Memphis in particular, is probably the most important cult, and certainly the one that more than any other attracted pilgrims and visitors. So it's no coincidence that Apis and Osiris Apis, Osirapis, was chosen as the god to be combined with Greek Zeus, and it wouldn't be at all surprising if there was an image of the Apis bull present as early as that. So even if the one that you have in mind, a replica of which is now in the underground part of the Serapeum, you can go and see that now.
Okay.
Even if that one wasn't there at this particular moment in history, late Ptolemaic, it's very likely there was something like it there, I think.
Okay. We're on our way to the library now, I believe, and then we're going to hit the Hippodrome.
I just did a little quick tour of a spin around the Discobolus that they've got outside the library that I didn't notice before. But when I was testing yesterday, I saw him and I thought, you know what? He's pretty cool. I like him. I don't know why he's there, but I like him.
That statue is there to represent, hey, don't forget this is a Roman town. That's what they're trying to say.
Yeah.
So we should maybe say, obviously the library is one of the known features of ancient Alexandria, well attested in evidence. There's no question it existed. We are able to reconstruct the history of it. It was probably built in around the reign of, possibly as early as the late reign of Ptolemy I, more likely his son and successor Ptolemy II. It was badly damaged when Julius Caesar was in town, warring against Ptolemy XIII and associates, and badly damaged on multiple occasions over the years. We don't know where it was. We don't know what the form of it was. We know that it is reputed to have contained thousands and thousands of important manuscripts gathered from all around the world, but none of this survives at all. So what we're looking at is, again, sort of best guess based on buildings of this type discovered elsewhere in the classical world, and descriptions. Although I have to say, even somebody like Strabo, who does give us good information about geography and monuments and the landscape, even then his descriptions of specific buildings and what they look like inside are not really enough to give us much of an idea. So the designers, I think, are mostly relying on evidence of this kind of building from elsewhere in the classical world.
We've got a question in the chat here. I'm assuming that's meant to say statues rather than statutes. But there's been a question: are the individual statues accurately attested?
The ones that are just dotted around the city generally, I don't think so, no. And if we look closely at them, you will see that they are actually repeated. So were there statues present in the city? Yes, there would have been. How many, we don't know. And what I will say is they are certainly based on statues that exist. So the Discobolus is a good example of this. There are a number of famous Discobolus statues, which this could have been based upon.
So they're based on real statues, but some of them we see are kind of like with the library, right? It's based on real buildings that we know of in this period and with the Romans, but they're repeated all over town, so a lot of them aren't going to be accurately attested.
Yeah, agreed, really. And just to add again, if it wasn't clear, we know so little of the real layout of streets and buildings and things like that. So we don't even have a ground plan, say, of a building as famous as the library or the Museum. So when it comes to details like the placement of individual statues, the designers have just had to go on what little evidence there is, but we can't know this at all.
And we did look, I think on our first tour, we were looking at the credits, if you will. And I mean, there are people that we know, people that we've worked with, people whose work we've depended on, who were consultants and helpful in the designing of the landscape for this. So, yeah, I mean, this is real historical work that's been done.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. My feeling is that as an immersive experience, it's sensational. It's absolutely incredible. as in terms of how closely the designers have stuck to what evidence there is, again, I can see very little to complain about here.
Yeah.
By the way, incidentally, we are currently on the main east-west street running through the city, which again is attested in the classical accounts, the written accounts. 99% certainly, it's attested on the ground as well. So we know that the city was arranged on a grid plan. It was mapped out like that from the very beginning by Alexander the Great's architects. And it was always designed with a crossroad of streets running through the center, one going north-south, one going east-west. There was enough left of the ancient city in plan on the ground for a cartographer, Mahmoud Bey, an Egyptian cartographer, Mahmoud Bey el-Falaki, to be able to trace the lines of the streets in the late 19th century, 1860s. And he was able to establish what he believed to be the main east-west street, Canopic Street, because it's running in the direction of the city of Canopus to the east. And most scholars and archaeologists who have looked at his reconstruction since agree that we have it. And in fact, that one of the main streets in Alexandria today still follows that route. And going through this gate as we are now, this would be the Rosetta Gate. And again, that's attested in texts and images, and it was still standing until the early part of the 19th century. So that, sadly, is one part of the ancient city that was still there only a couple of 100 years ago that's now gone. But they've done a good job in realizing that.
Well, and just really quickly, Alexandria was founded in 332 BC. So the city that we're, traveling through during this tour is like 300 years old by this point. So it's, for those of you watching from the United States, it's well older than our country. So we're looking at stuff that's already really old by the time that we get there.
Yeah, and the Ptolemaic city is it pretty quickly reached not maybe the peak of its size, and it was extended, but the city walls, the Ptolemaic city walls, represent the sort of great period, if you like, for the city. It continued to be a very large and monumental, very beautiful, highly regarded city for many centuries, but following the end of the Roman period into the medieval and later, it shrank in size, actually. So at this point, it's probably about as big and grand as it ever was.
Yeah. And we're flying over the Hippodrome, which is probably one of the most Roman things that could be in the town. So they had horse races inside, and
which you can play in the game.
Which you can play in the game. And one thing that we have talked about is the architecture inside. We're not sure really what the inside looked like, but we can infer the shape from other buildings that were like this. But I do think, based on I think that there were obelisks inside because the Romans loved the obelisks, and so they were going to put them in these places. But this is what you would see if you went inside and got to watch a horse race.
The obelisk being inside the Hippodrome reminds me of Constantinople, Istanbul, where there is to this day standing an obelisk of Thutmose III in the circus area there around the Blue Mosque and Hagia Sophia. I don't know if the inspiration comes from there, but you're right. In any case, Kate, yeah, of course. And the Romans were bringing obelisks from different parts of Egypt to Alexandria at this point, and other things as well, sphinxes and statues and masonry and that sort of stuff. There's a cautionary note to sound here, maybe, because when we were looking at this game just recently, when we were looking at the tour, I started off saying oh, it's in the wrong place. The hippodrome's in the wrong place. Because there was a hippodrome which is invisible now on the surface, but again, it was visible certainly 2 centuries ago on the ground, which is just to the southwest of the Serapeum where we were earlier. That doesn't appear in the game. There is no, that I know of, there's no archaeological evidence for a hippodrome over to the east. But Kate quite rightly put me in my place, explaining that is exactly where Strabo puts the hippodrome, just beyond the Rosetta Gate. So the way we approached it on the horse going along Canopic Street through the Rosetta Gate and to the hippodrome, it absolutely matches Strabo's description. So so I was wrong. So maybe don't listen to anything I say. Yeah.
You were wrong, and Strabo was right. I don't know how much more that's going to happen.
Yeah, it's interesting. It is interesting to see what they've done, though. You know, like finding things out that way, because it made us go back and look again. You know, we just went, oh, well, Chris has said this. Chris thinks this, and then we were like, oh, we'll have a look at other evidence, and then other evidence has gone. Maybe Chris is wrong.
Now you know. Don't listen to Chris.
Now you know why I'm asking most of the questions.
Yeah. Check your sources, folks. That's the lesson here.
Check your Strabo before you start talking about Alexandria.
Don't listen to boring old men lecturing you on.
Lies.
I have started making my way over to the palace area now, Chris.
Yep.
So I will go in through the kind of garden way and then go to look at the area where there's that nice boat, although I don't think it's there in the Discovery node, but the little harbour that had the Cleopatra boat on it.
Oh, the harbour. So we're headed toward the palace, and we're going kind of back through the gardening area, I think is what Gemma said, and we're going to possibly see a Cleopatra boat. Is that? Oh, Cleopatra bath.
No, boat.
Wait, boat. Okay, sorry.
Yeah, I don't know if it's there, though. It's there in the game because it's part of the story in the game. But there are certain aspects of the game that are not in the Discovery if they are maybe not relevant, or maybe they were put in specifically to tell the game story. They take them out for the Discovery because there's no, reason for them to be there.
That's right. And the one time that we were playing this, we were watching Gemma play. She was in not Discovery mode, so she had to fight quite a lot, which we decided would not be a great idea for most people watching. Because it's gory, so
don't want to
there may be.
Apologize for all the murder again.
Yeah, apologizing for the murder. But we don't. So there may be the Cleopatra boat, and there may not be. So we're looking for the Cleopatra boat, which is present if you're fighting people, but may not be in the Discovery. One thing I really like, though, is watching our man ride his horse through town and people racing to get out of his way. I think that is extremely accurate.
It would be kind of scary, though, and sometimes as well you push people out of the way. If you run directly at someone, the character will just go, get out of the way, which is quite amusing.
Nice.
Although, and sometimes as well you can knock people over. So there'll be, just your average Greek man or Egyptian woman walking down the street, you're riding on your horse. If you ride directly at them, you can actually knock them flying, which obviously would happen. Or they would move out the way pretty quick.
Oh, just a little aside, actually. I was just talking to a friend over email about this yesterday, and we happened to be talking about the way the Egyptian language sounds. And one of the little details in the game, I'm not sure that's going to be coming across for you guys at home, is that the designers have had the characters who are walking around speaking in what is recognizably ancient Egyptian. We don't know how Egyptian was pronounced, but it is clearly, as good a sort of effort as they can make, and you can hear ancient Egyptian words. So down to that sort of level of detail, it's a full-on immersive experience. It's not just what you're seeing, but what you're hearing too.
To use that example of sending people flying because you've ridden your horse at them, they will shout "Netcheru!" which obviously means gods.
Yes, yeah.
And if you send them flying, that's what they will shout at you. They have also invented an Egyptian swear word, which I don't think existed. They've just obviously picked a word to have swearing in the game. I'm not going to tell you what it is. But
You're going to have to find the swear words on your own. So, the boat was here, right? Yeah, but now it's not. Okay. So we're gonna go to the palace next, and then we're ending with Alexander's tomb. And yeah, that's all I got. Alexander's tomb, though, which is something that'll be interesting to talk about, the placement of it.
Do you want to have to say anything about the palace while we are in it? I know you'd be doing. I just did a little view with the eagle, just so you can see it from out to sea. But I am going to go inside. I don't know, Chris. Do we have any evidence for this? We talked about this briefly. I think we said it's buried now, or it's not. There's not.
Yeah, I mean, what we know is that which was along the shoreline. It's a bit difficult to say exactly where. Oh, okay. Can you
can hear you again?
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay. So there was such a thing as a palaces district. There was a main royal palace, which was somewhere on the shoreline, somewhere in that sort of corner of the bay, where the shoreline meets the Acrolochia. So the placement of the palace in the game is right as far as we can tell. There are lots of accounts of things going on. So, for example, this is the palace where Cleopatra supposedly sneaked herself in, according to one account, rolled up in a carpet, or possibly sort of disguised as she approaches by boat, sneaks herself in past the guards with the help of one or two accomplices, and eventually makes her way to Julius Caesar, who's by this point enough in control of Alexandria to have set himself up in the royal palace, and this is where their relationship blossoms. So it's a very important place from that point of view, but there are maybe some parts of the palace that it's been possible to retrieve from the seabed in recent years, but I mean so little that again all of this is really sort of conjecture, what we're actually seeing once we're inside, but all the same, I mean, it looks incredible, doesn't it? I think.
Yeah, it's pretty impressive. Again, like you've already said, the detail that they've gone into to try and represent the types of things that would be there. So it's not necessarily about making an exact copy of what we know was definitely there. It's about making it into a palace that Cleopatra and Caesar lived in. What kind of things would have been in there, and what would it have looked like and felt like as a place that they lived in, and a place that they actually existed in. And I think that's something that's quite important about what we see in this game, is that it creates a living environment, the like of which we don't have in any other way. You can't explore something like this in any other way.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
Does anybody else sort of look upon some of these things, like with the fires burning and the animals running and the hay in the street and the fruit on tables and drinks and things, and just wonder, like, what does this smell like? I know it's totally random, but I just wonder, is it more rotting fruit, or is it flowers, or is it sand and the ocean? I bet it's a mix of all of those things, but you just kind of wonder what this would have been like a full haptic experience, basically. I'm obviously the only one who wonders that.
No. I think
the
about
silence,
that too, especially with when you're in the temples. So there is an absolutely wonderful thing. If we have time, because it's not on our plan tour, but if we have time, I'll take us to look at it. There's a reconstruction of a procession with a ritual bark leading up to a temple. And it's got music, it's got people with sistra, it's got someone with an incense burner incensing, and it's got the priests. and it's amazing. I love it. I would just want to
hope,
show it to
yeah.
everyone.
That'd be awesome. And I really am enjoying, especially in the palace, the juxtaposition between the Roman architecture and the Egyptian statues, because we see that when we go into the British Museum, and we see that when we go into a number of museums where ancient Egypt is on display. But here, you know, you really do have sort of, you really have that kind of important distinction between the two.
In the chat, someone has mentioned that playing Assassin's Creed Odyssey makes them want olives and wine. So looks like Kate and every other one reacts to the food.
Does everyone want wine all the time? Like, is that not is that not a thing?
This is fair.
Oh, okay.
Not always with olives, though.
I've just done a little tour around the garden, the gardens of the palace, and I am making my way over to Alexander's tomb, which is where we will finish the section on Alexandria. We will have a look around Alexander's tomb. Chris is going to tell us a bit about the tomb, talk to us about locations, because Chris knows a lot about this. And if you've read Chris's book, which you should have done, then you will know as well.
You're very kind, Gemma. Thank you for the plug.
I'm sending it to my dad, Chris, to make him read it.
Oh, great. Incredible.
Like, you should read this, Dad. You will enjoy it.
I hope he liked it.
Me too. Otherwise, I'll just have sent him something and he'll be like, why are you sending this? No, he will. Honestly, he loves it.
No, it did. Yeah, Chris's book is really good. I really like it a lot.
You got it.
Chris's book. Someone did ask earlier whether you've got any suggestions of Egyptology books for lay people who might not know much about it to get further into it.
Can we come back to that question at the end, Mark? Can you put that one aside? But yes, we can do that.
Yep.
But it'll take a while. So
and we might even post a list or something on the Playing in the Past website.
So I've run towards Alexander's tomb, and I'm going to do a little stand outside the gate for a few moments, so you can see the entrance from the street into the tomb, and then I will just start walking around it, and then Chris can introduce us to the where is Alexander's tomb question.
Yep.
Thanks. Well, maybe by way of starting on this. Just to say, one of the things I'd seen when I was Googling reconstructions of Alexandria was a visualization of the tomb, which made me quite excited, because having written about it in my book, it had been in my mind a lot, and the way that it is visualized here I think is amazing. It's really very impressive, and I didn't know where it was in the game, even after I got myself my Xbox and the game, and I was sort of staggering around, just deliriously happy to be in ancient Egypt for a while, but mostly sort of bumping into things and shuffling along walls and just trying to get around. But I bumbled my way into the tomb once I realised where I was, and I was able to realise where I was because it matches the descriptions that we have. I was really very excited. So. We think that Alexander the Great was buried in Egypt 3 times. I think that's most likely. His body arrived in Egypt. Alexander himself died in Babylon, but his body was taken to Egypt by his successor as Pharaoh of Egypt, Ptolemy I, who establishes the Ptolemaic dynasty, the Ptolemaic line. It arrived in Egypt before Alexandria had been built. Alexander had specified the location and it had been designed, but nothing had been built. And there was no monumental tomb. So we think probably his body rested in some sort of makeshift tomb in Memphis for a while, but was then transferred to Alexandria, presumably once the tomb was ready. We're not exactly sure where that was or what it was like. But at a certain point, it seems, according to textual evidence, in the reign of Ptolemy IV, four reigns into the period, a new kind of family mausoleum was constructed for the Ptolemaic line, and Alexander's body was also in there. Now, clearly, this was not the same as the first Alexandrian tomb of Alexander. But so what we're going to hear is this sort of group mausoleum, which was built for the Ptolemies, but with Alexander's tomb as the centerpiece. Again, just to be absolutely clear, we've got no archaeological evidence for this at all. So we are 100% reliant on the textual descriptions, and none of them gives us a really clear idea of where it was, except to say that it was in the Palaces district. And again, we don't really know the shape of that, but we do know that it was along the coast, roughly in the area of the Acrolochias, the Lochias Peninsula. So in the game, it's in the right place. Alexander's body, contrary to Macedonian tradition, was not cremated, it was mummified. And some sort of passing references suggest that the bodies of the Ptolemies were also visible, but basically a number of sort of ancient celebrities, Julius Caesar, Augustus Caesar, Hadrian, various other Roman emperors went to visit Alexander's body. They made a kind of pilgrimage, and they were able to see it, supposedly. So the body was on view, and as I say, there were passing references to the idea that Ptolemies were to be seen as well. In terms of other information about the building, there's very little. There's a reference to kind of indignant pyramids. So whether in some way the pyramid was, incorporated into the design is not really clear. But Alexander's body is said to have been in a grotto hewn out for a tomb, which suggests that it was at a subterranean level. So we would expect to descend to find this tomb. And Strabo, again, very usefully, tells us, by the way, this group tomb was given the name Semar, or sometimes Somar. Somar possibly having something to do with the idea of sleeping, Semar more to do with the idea of a body, the corporeal remains of the deceased. So this is the Semar, this group tomb. Strabo tells us that by his time, Alexander's body, which had been contained within a golden coffin, had gone, and it had been put into a sarcophagus of crystal or glass. So, and as I say, it was apparently on view. The suggestion is that at one point, I think it was Augustus Caesar who reaches out to touch the face of Alexander the Great and accidentally broke the nose off. So that it was unwrapped as well. Anyway, what we're seeing on screen now is the moment where we enter this great tomb, and we're looking at a sarcophagus of crystal. It appears to be sort of translucent crystal, could be translucent alabaster, and there's a precedent for that, or more than one precedent, in particular the sarcophagus of Seti I, which is translucent. It's not transparent, but it's translucent, like this. And it's a sarcophagus of a sort of oval lozenge kind of shape, which is sort of okay for it's right for the late period, early Ptolemaic. Appears to be decorated in very intricate hieroglyphs, maybe some iconography of some gods, which again matches the coffin type of the time. It seems to be much bigger than a coffin, which is visible inside. And it appears as though some grave goods have been placed inside as well. That doesn't really seem right. That doesn't match any sort of tradition that we have. Then at the end of the sarcophagus plinth, we have some very large hieroglyphs in two cartouches, which are very, very visibly the coronation name and the birth name, the nomen of Alexander. So the cartouche on the right phonetically spells out the name Alexander, as was the case in the monuments erected in his name. So, this is a really nice mixture, I think, of an attempt to recreate what was described visually, borrowing bits of Alexander's monuments from elsewhere, a little bit Hellenistic, a little bit Egyptian. As I say, apart from the fact that the sarcophagus seems as though it's much, much bigger than the body, and it appears to have grave goods in it, which I don't think is probably how it would have been. It seems very good.
Chris, just a question. What's beside the candles? Suggestion of tablets or just rubble?
Yeah, not sure. Possibly smashed pots, smashed as part of an offering ritual. Yeah, I'm not sure. That's the kind of thing that we see elsewhere in Egyptian cemeteries. I think in the case of a body like this, very few people would have been allowed access to Alexander's body. But then there's not huge heaps of offerings around and about. So yeah, maybe not so bad. Maybe that's fair enough.
So I have a question. If we ever are able to positively locate this tomb, what does that do for Egyptologists? What does that do for Greco-Roman archaeologists in Alexandria? Like, what would be the significance of that?
That's a good question.
What you find.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. That was going to be exactly my answer. No, not at all. No, not at all. I was just going to add, actually, by the way, just when you gave us that really great view down, sort of into the coffin, you could see what looks like a late period of Ptolemaic mummy case. So again, this in this case, it looks quite rigid. So probably painted wood, maybe made of cartonnage. There are also some canopic jars in there. Again, I don't really feel as though that's right. A painted wooden coffin. There isn't, as far as I know, there's no description of that. It seems more likely that his body was resting unwrapped, probably rotting away, sadly. Anyway, but yeah, I think Gemma's absolutely right. If the tomb were to be located, I think sadly, first of all, we're unlikely to find very much other than the ground plan, maybe some monumental slab. I mean, there's one or two, really, candidate for the first Alexandrian tomb of Alexander, which is a monumental tomb probably for a single individual, which is now called the alabaster tomb. It's made of giant slabs of alabaster. It's probably in the wrong place. It's completely uninscribed. It was found with no material that would allow us to say who might have been buried there. I think that's really the problem. If we find the tomb of Alexander, the Sema, we may not recognize it as such. And even if we can be sure it's what it is, the likelihood of there being very much preserved is so slim, unfortunately. I'm not sure that we would learn very much. Yeah, it's. I think the sort of benefit of discovering the tomb of Alexander the Great would just be in knowing, that this is the place where his body was laid to rest. There'd just be that. I think there'd be a sort of incredible magic, for want of a better word, that would attach to that place. I'm not sure that we'd learn that much. That's maybe sounds very cynical, pessimistic, but
no, yeah, that's awesome.
All right. Shall we end Alexandria and have just a 5-minute break for people to go and get drinks or whatever, while we transfer over to Saqqara?
Yes.
Yeah.
And I'm going to repeat what you said, Gemma. So what we're going to do is we'll take a 5-minute break to let people step away from the computer, go get a drink, go use facilities, and then we are going to fast travel, I believe, down to Saqqara. Is that right? Are we going into the step pyramid?
We are. We're going in. We'll start off on the outside, but we are going in.
Okay.
For those of you who are not going to go anywhere, do anything, if you have any questions that you want to ask now that we've missed, we can go through them. Mark, are there any on your list?
There are a couple, yeah. So someone asked, is there any crossover with this sort of game that you could use for school history projects and virtual tours and things like that?
Yes. Okay, very, very quickly though, just before I answer that question, I just want to say bye to Katrina, who has just said she's going to pick up her son. Thank you so much for coming, Katrina, and I hope to get to see you one day at work soon. Bye-bye. Yes. So the discovery mode of the game is actually meant to be educational. And although we have kind of talked you through this part of it, when we go to Saqqara, I will put us onto the tour for the step pyramid. It's a tour that's already in the game, so you don't need us, and it gives you some information. You just walk around, you go to the kind of the checkpoint, and then it will tell you something about what's happening. And those were created by Ubisoft with the help of historians and Egyptologists. So historians and Egyptologists helped to write what is in those. So it is meant to be educational, and it's meant to be there for you to use. The thing about this game is that as a game, Assassin's Creed, they are generally 18 rated games because of the violence that's in them. You know, they're entertainment. They're not specifically created to educate about history, although they cover a wide variety of historical periods across all games. This is, I think, the 11th game, or maybe Odyssey is the 11th Assassin's Creed game. There's a lot of them, and so initially they didn't have discovery mode. So kind of using the game to educate younger people is obviously not necessarily going to be a great idea, because you can avoid going around and fighting people, which you don't really want to do. If all you actually want to do is look at the architecture, or talk about how Egyptians have been represented, like those types of things. But you can definitely do that with this game. And the Discovery Tour is available on YouTube. I'm not sure if all of them are there, but somebody, it might be Ubisoft, I'm not sure, I'd have to double check, but you can definitely get some of the tours on YouTube. So you would be able to get your students to watch the videos on YouTube, and it's not interactive like what we're doing. There won't be anyone there to answer your questions, but it's just someone walking around each of the checkpoints and then listening to what they're telling you. And I think, Chris, in your playing on Xbox, you have done a few of the tours right now.
Yeah, I have. Yes, I have. I did. But I have to. I have done a number of the tours, but also just wandering around in the game is, I mean, it's just great. Yeah, it's just so much fun. I am now actually playing the game. I mean, I bought it thinking that I wasn't going to even play the game. I was just going to do the educational bit, because I didn't want to try and fight anybody. But I am now playing the game because it's opened up more environments and places to go, particularly Thebes. But it although obviously the issue of it being an 18 rated game is a bit problematic, I suppose, for teaching kids. If it could be done in a supervised way, it is very possible just to wander around. And there is a lot to see and a lot to learn.
There is a lot to see and learn, and I think I did a course for 14, 15-year-olds last year as part of something.
I'll be right back.
Okay, something called the Brilliant Club, where students who are at schools who are doing well, but are from perhaps backgrounds that are disadvantaged, it's to help them see that university might be an option for them. So it gives them a little kind of idea of university-style teaching. And so I did that, and I asked them initially at the schools whether or not it would be possible for me to use this game to demonstrate certain things. What I wanted to talk about was Western perceptions of ancient Egypt was the title of my course. And so I wanted to talk about that, and I wanted to use the game. But they said, we can't let you because it with it having an 18 rating means that it could be seen, parents may see it as, you know, you're promoting it, which is obviously not what you want to be doing. But that is in part why they created the discovery, and they have taken out all the elements that are problematic, so that literally all you can do is walk around. You know, you can't even, you can't, for instance, you can't drown yourself. If, you know, you can't just go for a swim and drown. You can't. If I jumped off the lighthouse, we wouldn't die. We would be fine. It would be scary, but we wouldn't have died. Whereas in the game, obviously, if you jump off the lighthouse, you do die.
Gemma,
yes.
is there any way you can get the sound working again? Just a couple of comments, and you've gone a bit quieter on my stream as well.
Okay, yeah, all right. I will transfer us to Sakara, and then you can perhaps just talk about what we're looking at while I try and fix the sound.
Sounds good. While you're doing that, there's another question here. She's asking whether there are elements in the missions of the game that are taken or inspired by Egyptian stories or mythologies that we know about.
Ooh. Chris, do you know? Oh.
I know the answer, but I just need to do this.
Well, I will say I don't know the answer, but while Gemma's doing that, I have not played this game. The only exposure I have to it is through what Gemma's playing and some of the things that Chris has said about, especially going down to Thebes, and you know, hunting crocodiles or whatever, and because there used to be lots of crocodiles on the Nile before the Aswan Dam, and it's interesting to me because I am sure that crocodiles were, you know, a problem, but they were also a deity, associated with the deity. And it's interesting to read 19th century travel accounts. I have Marianne Brocklehurst's one right here, and her nephew Alfred was trying to hunt crocodiles the whole time with a rifle, and he was a terrible shot. And apparently what you had to do was you would have to shoot the croc, and usually they were used to it just running away from them, and so they would have to wait around for almost 3 days to see if a crocodile basically come floating to the surface, because it was dead. And there was at one point he shot a croc, and they just waited in that spot for 3 or 4 days to see if a crocodile was going to come up so that they could claim it, which I don't know why you'd want it by that point, but it never showed up. He never got his crocodile. So I don't know. Otherwise, I don't know. But I know there is an afterlife tour that you can take in Thebes that I think Gemma's done. I think Chris has done it as well. But Thebes doesn't have the discovery mode just yet, but I think that is coming, if I'm correct. Gemma, isn't that right?
Yes.
And she's gone too. Okay.
I'm here.
Sorry.
No, I'm here. Can you hear me now?
Oh, good.
I want to see if the chat can hear me now. Because we've had a little play and see whether or not that has made any difference. I didn't hear the full thing of what you were saying, though, Kate.
Yes. I was talking about how down in Thebes there are particular things that were that are accurate to what people were doing at particular times, like you know, hunting for crocodiles, and then I mentioned the afterlife part down in Thebes.
Yeah. I haven't. I'll be honest. I haven't finished that part of the game yet, so I can't tell you exactly what the afterlife part is like, fully anyway. But it's quite cool. They have created kind of areas where you would go essentially through what is a false door, and then it looks exactly like you would expect a false door to look. And you go through it into this kind of portal, and then there are different areas behind it which are the afterlife, and they represent different areas of the afterlife, and they are associated with different pharaohs. That's all I can tell you about it at the moment, other than the fact that there are bar birds in there which are so creepy and weird.
Oh yeah, you posted about that. Yeah, that's right.
Okay, yeah, I did post about that. I don't know why I seem to be having trouble with my headset, but people seem to be unable to hear it. I don't know why you guys can hear it properly, but
Yeah, but we're on the chat with you.
yeah.
Yeah, there's a mixed response in the chat to your voice.
To my
level.
voice.
Your voice in general, yeah. No to the audio, but it seems like most people can hear it okay.
Yeah. I'm sorry guys that it's not ideal, but you know, at least you can hear Chris and Kate, who know way more than me anyway. It's fine.
Yeah, we'll just repeat all of the wonderful things that you say.
Dan somewhere has asked, he said, did I hear there's going to be a discovery mode in Thebes as well? Actually, Chris asked Ubisoft this and they didn't reply, did they, Chris? Or did they?
No, they didn't. No, they didn't. I have to say though, I did manage to get myself far enough in the game that I could get the Thebes extension and then play in that. So and it is possible to do quite a lot of running around and exploring, as long as you can avoid getting killed. But still, I mean, it is I'd say it's absolutely brilliant. Thebes, absolutely brilliant. Both sides of the river. My only grumble with there not being a discovery mode is that, as I say, it just does make it that bit more difficult because there's the threat of getting killed. So I wasn't able to explore the Temple of Hatshepsut or the Ramesseum to the extent that I would have liked, because there are things that can kill you in both cases. But still, I mean, absolutely amazing, and being able to hike up into the mountains and go to the Valley of the Kings via the climb up into the hills rather than the road, which is the only way of doing it now, without annoying the police in the 21st century in real life. I mean, is really great. So even while there isn't a discovery mode, I'd still say if you can get that bit of the game. If you have the game and a way of playing it, if you can get that bit, it's well worth doing.
Yeah, and you can also sorry, I've just moved the microphone again. I probably messed it up now. If you are watching the YouTube videos of the discovery mode, you can also search on YouTube for videos that other people have made, because people might have made I haven't checked. People might have made recordings of them like playing the quests in Thebes and doing other activities in Thebes, like fighting things, whatever, looking at temples. That's probably just us, but you know, fighting things is more likely. But those things might be available for you to look at as well. If we're talking about going back to the educational side of this and using this in lectures and stuff, it really does. It all depends on the age of your students.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
shall we start? Shall we start at Saqqara now? I loaded us into the game at Saqqara, and I don't know if you guys noticed, but we are in fact standing on top of the step pyramid.
Yep.
So I'm just
Is this one of those jumping down things? Can we jump down?
Yeah, I'm going to jump down, which just makes it look like I'm taking massive steps. You know, like you're doing each one of the steps of the pyramid is a step, which is quite funny.
Nice.
Obviously not very realistic, but at least we won't die.
True.
So walking very slowly.
I think that's always a good thing. So we're on the west bank of the Nile. Can we even see that from the top up here, Gemma? Can you see if we can?
I don't think we could. I've started making my way down now, but I don't actually think that you can see that from here. There's a mountainy range kind of in the way that you can't really see past.
Okay. Now, Chris, I know you've been in this pyramid, but have you jumped down all the steps like we're doing right now? That's the big question.
No, they wouldn't let me do that.
That's too bad.
Yeah.
I mean, you wouldn't want to, though, would you?
No.
You said you were not keen.
Joking aside, no, I really wouldn't.
I think perhaps we should say that the pyramid in the game that we're looking at right now is in perhaps a bit of a better state than it currently is. Is that right? Still got casing.
Yes, yes, it is. You're right. It's still got its casing. I mean, again, one of the things that I think is really just brilliantly done about the game is that you have to bear in mind that at this point in history, the Step Pyramid is something like 2,400 years old already. Mm-hmm. So the site is maybe not out of use. Well, Saqqara certainly wasn't out of use. But you know, this particular monument is already very old, and so the way they've kind of created it here is a really nice mixture of not brand new, but also not cleared and restored as it appears today. There's a lot more windblown sand actually around pyramid as it is in the game than there is today. It's been cleared a lot.
Yeah, there's a lot of. This is something that's consistent with sites in the game, because a lot of the sites like this were very old already at the time the game is set. So the game is set, I believe the story takes place between 49 and 47 BC. So all of this that we have been looking at here is already very old, and also it's probably fallen out of kind of regular use. So it would have been, you know, the sand would have accumulated, and what we kind of are seeing they've added in the game is they've made it so that people kind of use the site for like storage, or they might, you know, they might go out to do something in the desert, they might go hunting or whatever, and there'll be little camps set up. So that kind of activity is happening around, but not so much else. So the sand is still there because sand would only be moved if you were going to go there for a reason. You know, if you were going to set up a camp somewhere, you just cleared the little bit that you were going to go in, and the rest of it, well, doesn't matter. So yeah, it's like that on sites across the board pretty much throughout the game. I think the only one that isn't really is Thebes, with the Valley of the Kings, which is in the game actively being used as a kind of deposit. The Romans seem to be looking for stuff in there. I think they're digging around, but we're not going to go there. So let's talk about the Step Pyramid instead, and how it's just sunset now in the game, which is quite pretty. I sort of, we're about to go in, but I'm like, actually it looks really nice outside.
It does.
It's looking very
Can you do the eagle quickly, or is it too late for that?
I can do the eagle. No, I can do the eagle. We can have a little overview of what the sky
Yeah,
looks
just
like.
while the sky looks nice.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll
and just to see
fly around
the
the pyramid. Yeah, I'll fly around the pyramid, and I'll have a little go over the kind of outbuildings, because you can see the wall, the enclosure wall is quite good in the game. It's well rendered. And then, yeah, Chris, you will know this site better than I do, but there are some smaller buildings over to the side. Actually, from the eagle view as well, you can see the river now because we're much higher up. Only just. Is that Memphis?
You can also see other pyramid sites which appear much too close. But the surrounding wall of the Step Pyramid enclosure looks very good. The Hebsed Court that we're just flying over now looks good. The Hebsed buildings in the background again look good. It is actually possible to run out through the southeastern entranceway of the Step Pyramid complex, which is the way that tourists enter it now. And again, all looks very good. This is Darshur in the background, isn't it? Which again is a bit too close. And then the white walls of Memphis. Over towards the cultivation, which you know, it's in exactly the right place.
And those are all date palms. Sorry, I'm thinking about dates. They're just wonderful down at Saqqara. Just grab a bag of dates.
Dan has asked, did the Egyptians lose the knowledge that the pyramids were tombs at any point?
No, I don't think they did. No, I don't think they did. The earliest travellers who were there in, the earliest Europeans who were there in, say, the 15 and 1600s were left in no doubt by the local population that these were sepulchres, and in many cases it was possible to go inside these tombs and see mummified dead bodies. So no, I don't think that was lost. Good question.
It's a good question. I also don't think so, because there's evidence of even Greek and Roman tourists going inside tombs. I don't know. I'm trying to think of an example. I know that there is one at Amarna, actually, I think, but mostly they're the ones at Thebes, the tombs of the nobles. There is actually graffiti in some of them, so the tombs were already open, and people kind of would have already known what they were, and even in antiquity, people were sort of using them as places to visit.
It really, I'm gonna just say that it's a misconception that Egyptians lost that knowledge, mainly because Westerners came in the 18th and 19th centuries and started making guesses about the purpose of these massive monuments. And often they were wrong, but those were the ideas that were perpetuated then in Western society, which there were some very wrong ideas, and then there were some, of course, ideas that were, no, these were tombs and here's the evidence for it. But very often when you get incorrect historical or scientific information, sometimes that gets proliferated a lot further than the sometimes seemingly kind of boring story of these were tombs, or maybe they were what's one thing, maybe they were beacons for some sort of celestial activity, and that sort of thing, which we haven't really seen evidence for either.
No.
Yeah, it's true. It's true, actually. Of course, it's true, isn't it? That there was the belief that the Great Pyramid, the pyramids of Giza, were granaries, as per various ancient writers. Yes. So I suppose in those, I suppose the question is, if the question is specifically, did the Egyptians lose the knowledge?
Right.
I'm not sure that we know. Europeans may have been gravely mistaken in some cases. So yeah, that question needs quite a lot of unpacking.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a difficult one.
But we could probably play, can we?
Would you like, Chris, for me to start the tour for the pyramid, or would you prefer we didn't do the tour? Oh, have we lost Chris? I think we might have actually lost Chris. Chris is
No, I think let's do it. Okay. No, let's do it. Yeah,
okay.
Yeah.
So it might be. I'm not sure how loud it might be, but I will start it.
Welcome to Inside Djoser's Step Pyramid.
Before we start the tour.
Yes.
So in the game, several different groups use the tombs and structures as bases or strongholds. How common was it for the sites to change hands?
That's an interesting question. I think that as a lot of the bases that places in the game have been turned into are Roman. And this is a thing that we sort of mentioned a little bit at the beginning, where I asked Chris whether or not it was very likely that the lighthouse at Alexandria might have been turned into a kind of Roman fort. That is certainly something that the Romans would do, and I think that there's evidence, isn't there, of reuse of sites, over Egyptian history by other Egyptians and other people. I'm not sure. It sort of brings into this idea of ownership of the site and who owns the site. It's kind of asking that, and I don't know if they thought of it in that way, in the same way that we would. Do you understand what I mean?
They were. I know what you're getting at. Tombs, generally speaking, were used and reused an awful lot. So I was just reading actually the other day that I mean, maybe it's a slightly different thing, but the Hellenistic era catacombs in Alexandria, exhibit evidence of individual loculi, which are these little shelves that were used for the placement of bodies or cremated remains. It's fairly clear that in some cases those were used once, and then when there weren't any other spaces available, the next person would come along, the body would just be shoved to one side, the skeleton would just be sort of pushed to one side, and then it would be used again. But we've got evidence from lots of different places that tombs were reused for that purpose. But then you've also got things. We've got plenty of evidence that they were used as dwelling places, as hermitages, particularly by early Christian hermits, monks, and then in some cases even as churches, or for other purposes like that. So. I worked in a tomb in Thebes a few years ago that was used as a kind of pen for keeping animals as well. So, they're sort of convenient spaces for all kinds of uses. I guess the real question is to what extent and for how long did they remain sacred enough that they could only be used for burial? That seems to have varied, but certainly it's not the case that tombs, once they were used once, remain sacred and could never be used ever again. Not at all.
Yeah, that's right. Before we go in as well, I just think we might as well answer the question from Manora's Flame, which is, did the Egyptians of the 18th and 19th century know the use of these tombs? And I assume you just mean the tombs in general, like the pyramid that we're currently at, etc. Which, yes, they did. I think they did. Certainly, they knew the locations of a lot of them. Certainly, I don't know what you think, Kate, on this.
I agree with you, Gemma. I think they knew where a lot of them were, and they knew the use of them. But the question kind of remains: did French and British Egyptologists who were going in listen to them? The answer would be no. Not usually, unless they found that, like in the case of the Abdel Rasul family down in Thebes, they started noticing that there were a number of things going up for sale that the Egyptologists didn't know where they were coming from, and so they wanted to make sure that they got a handle on that. So I think the sort of colonial mind that went into Egypt in the 18th and 19th century dismissed a lot of local knowledge, and we then get a story coming out of that period that says Egyptians didn't know, they were using the limestone to build their own houses or break it down for agricultural use. How could they? That sort of thing. They had no idea what they were doing, but I think they had much more of an idea than we have given them credit for. And a lot of people are doing a lot of work to repair that, but to repair that misconception that Egyptians in that period didn't know about their own history, but they weren't really asked. And if they were asked, it was for, lead me to this place where you're getting all this stuff. And then, okay, great, thanks, now kind of go away. So, yeah. And yes, okay, so they responded, yeah, if they were listened to. Not really, at least in my experience.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. Okay, so I will make a start on the tour now, so that you guys can actually see what the tours are like. As I said before, some of them at least are available on YouTube, so if you wanted to actually just watch the tours that have been provided, you can do that. And again, I'm not sure how loud the narration is going to be.
The architect of the step pyramid, Imhotep, was a man of great importance to Pharaoh Djoser and ancient Egyptians in general. The base of a statue of Djoser, discovered in 1926, celebrates Imhotep as a carpenter, sculptor, stonemaker, and chief of the seers. Little is known of Imhotep's day-to-day life. While he is credited for writing medical texts, it is for his role of architect that he is most famously known.
I don't know if you want to say a little bit about Imhotep, Chris.
Sure, I can. So Imhotep, by the way, I think I might have just dropped out just now, so apologies if I repeat anything anybody's already said, but Imhotep, we believe, was the architect of the Step Pyramid, the pyramid we are just entering. The Step Pyramid is the first. It was a very much a sort of experimental monument. It went through several changes of design, but it was originally just what we call a mastaba, which is a roughly square-shaped platform overlying a subterranean tomb. But in this case, the decision was taken to build a sequence of smaller platforms on top of decreasing size, eventually creating this stepped monument, which has roughly a pyramid shape. We don't understand why they decided to do this, but the most sort of plausible explanation, it seems to me, is that it was an attempt to kind of reach up to the sky, which is where they believed the soul of the deceased was heading in the afterlife. But it's a masterpiece of engineering. Monumental buildings in Egypt up until this point, and we're at around about 2700 BC, so the best part of 5,000 years ago. Monumental buildings have been made of mud brick, which is much easier to come by, much easier to manufacture. It's much lighter. So building on a monumental scale presents relatively fewer challenges. Building in stone is much harder, principally because the problem that one to create a monument of sufficient size, particularly height, made out of a heavy material like it's prone to collapse. So the experimentation was partly designed to counter the problem of collapse. And we believe Imhotep was certainly a historical individual, certainly somebody who existed. Whether or not it was really Imhotep who was the designer of the pyramid is unclear. We only have that claim's only made many centuries after his lifetime. But Imhotep was certainly a very important individual in the time of his king, whose pyramid it is, and he's as good a candidate as we know as the designer, and therefore the inventor of the pyramid.
Lovely, thank you. Okay, I shall continue with the tour now.
From the design of the pyramid to the elements within the complex itself,
okay,
Imhotep set out to create something that would immortalize his king.
Thanks.
An architectural achievement, the Step Pyramid was made from stone blocks instead of mud brick. It was the first time Egyptians built a monument of that height. Imhotep explicitly intended for the stone to reflect natural materials. The funerary complex of Djoser remained famous throughout the centuries and millennia, and its great architect, Imhotep, was deified by ancient Egyptians during the late period. In addition to the central subterranean palace built for Djoser, 11 wells were dug. Each went to a depth of 33 meters and connected with a horizontal gallery extending for about 20 meters. The first 5 galleries were intended for members of the royal family.
Chris, based on what we're looking at right now, what we can see with our slight delay is that we're headed down further into the tomb. So I wonder, were they like at this point in time, were they using them as storage areas, like for grain and things like that, or do you know what I mean?
I see that. Sorry, could you just repeat that?
Oh yeah, so we were as we were sort of traveling down further into the subterranean part of this pyramid, We saw grain and things, and it looked like fresh grain, not, you know, old offerings. And just were the pyramids, like, was this area, would that be used for, you know, people living nearby in Memphis to store their grain? Do you know what I mean?
I guess that's possible. I do. I don't know of there being any evidence for that.
Gotcha.
I think.
Yeah, I don't. I mean, Memphis is a very, very busy place at this time, and Saqqara actually also. So I don't remember this from my own wandering around in the game. I don't think there's very much more to see to the north of the Step Pyramid, which doesn't match
Right.
what you would expect to see in reality at the time. The area to the north would have been very, very busy with pilgrimages and people crossing the desert along the Serapeum Way to visit the Saqqara Serapeum, as opposed to the Alexandria Serapeum, which we visited in the game not long ago. So from that point of view, whether or not the Step Pyramid, I just don't know what the situation was for the Step Pyramid at this point. Obviously, it was very visible. It would have been very striking on the landscape. I'm just not sure how it was treated at this point.
Okay.
Chris, another question. Were the pyramids aligned in any significant way? And if so, were the mastabas, I don't know that word, how to pronounce it, were they aligned the same way?
Yeah, if you pronounce that word wrong, it sounds a bit rude as well. So well done for dodging that. Sorry, silly reaction. Good question. Thank you. Thanks, Dan. Somewhere. So there was a theory which was in circulation for a while that the three main pyramids at Giza were aligned to match the stars in Orion's belt. I think that has now been discredited, that theory. I'm not quite sure what the latest is on that, but in any case, as far as I'm aware, that doesn't apply to any other pyramids, and it certainly doesn't apply to the master. So the Great Pyramid in particular is a masterpiece of design and also placement, and it's sort of incredibly accurate. And the belief is that the Egyptian engineers were, I think, to some extent, using the stars to place it on the Giza Plateau, but there's not quite the cosmic symbolism and significance encoded in the placement of any of these monuments that has been claimed in the past. By the way, in general, mastaba tombs are aligned north-south, and certain features were placed in specific places very deliberately. So there would be an offering chapel placed in the southeast, on the east face of the wall at the southern end. But again, that, you know, that's more to do with the cardinal points, not to do with the stars in the sky or anything like that. And they also don't follow that rigidly either. So, you know, one reason for of mastabas at Saqqara is that everybody wanted theirs to be built at the top of the escarpment looking down on the city. So they followed the line of the escarpment more than they did the sky, you know, and in that they follow the curve of the landscape, not any sort of celestial markers.
Thank you, Chris. I think I've just noticed that time is sort of getting away from us a little bit here, so I think unless the chat really wants to see the rest of the tour as it is in the discovery in the game, we can just run through this pyramid now and just talk a little bit about it, and then we can move over to Giza.
Can I just make a point actually here, Gemma?
Yes. Go for it.
Yep.
So sorry. So just where we were on the screen there, with the sort of guiding wiggly line of the tour on the floor in that very large area, that's the central shaft in the Step Pyramid, which is a very, very unusual and distinctive feature. It's a massive shaft cut down into the ground, at the bottom of which is the place where the body of the king was actually placed. And the way it appears in the game here, all you can see are the giant slabs of stone that were placed across the top of a kind of artificial box in which the king's body was placed. So it's a little bit as though our hero in the game doesn't know the tomb is there. They've kind of rendered those in the game very, very few. Yeah, so we're now seeing, if you look, you can see these cut blocks on the floor. That's the ceiling, royal tomb, and the king's body is underneath. Sorry, 1 second.
Which is also sort of lends credence to this idea that Imhotep built it as a giant mastaba, because when you were in the mastaba tombs, there is a shaft in the middle that goes down to the burial area.
Yeah, it's quite nice. You can actually see that there is a chamber underneath in this game. You can see as I've walked over it that there is a gap between. There's a gap down there, and as I walk over it, you can see little bits of sand falling down the holes. But that's the extent of detail to which the game has gone.
Talking about detailed tombs in the game, Catrosori00 has asked, in the game there's an important tomb at Siwa. Does it exist?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure which one is at Siwa. I would have to go and have a look and check. Mark, can you just keep that on the list, and we'll come back to it. We'll come back to it when we get out of this area. So I'm assuming that since no one has said they desperately want to see the rest of the discovery tour.
Yeah, I say go through Gemma and then get to Giza.
Yeah, all right. So I don't know. I'm just going to look at kind of the walls and the chambers and things that are inside here. So I don't know if Chris or yourself wants to comment on what we're seeing, just so people get a bit of an idea of what's going on here.
So we're in what are called the King's Compartments here, and they feature these incredible walls which are decorated with blue-green faience tiles, thousands and thousands of these little tiles, which are meant to recreate kind of reed mats which would have been draped on the walls in palace buildings, domestic buildings. Almost all of those tiles have now disappeared from the pyramid itself, but some parts of them have been reconstructed in museums in Egypt. It would have looked absolutely unbelievable, and it's unique to this pyramid.
Huh.
So to be able to see them here in a game is really cool.
Yeah, I bet it was really stunning actually, and it must have. I don't know. People wouldn't necessarily have seen it though, would they? Because no one's really going in there, and it's like, if I turn off the torch, because we've got the discovery tour on, it's kind of light in here. But when you go inside the Giza pyramids and you turn off your torch, it just goes completely pitch black. That's what it would have been like.
Let's not do that.
Yeah.
It's scary in the dark. Yeah. So I'm just gonna go around.
Are you able to go to another one of these little doorways? Kind of false doorways.
Was I looking at the closed one? I've gone into the there's an open one. It's got lots of little beetles on the wall. Is that the doorway you mean, Chris? We may have lost Chris.
There are a number of little doorways.
Wait, sorry, Chris, we lost you for a moment.
Which have images of the king.
Oh, okay.
Sorry, can you hear me now?
Can hear you now, yeah.
Yep. Ooh, bugs on the wall.
I'm sorry, I was just saying that in some of those doorways you get images of the of the king running the head's head.
Okay. So
and this is the last time you see any decoration inside a pyramid. I mean, all of this, the tiles, the images, the last time you see any decoration inside a pyramid till the end of the 5th dynasty. Mm-hmm. This is the beginning of the 3rd.
Yeah. Yeah, they are all broken.
I can post some photos of the real monument maybe after this.
That would be wonderful. That would be very good. For comparison.
Just to keep an eye on the time, we had said this would run for 2 hours, and we're running up on that time, which is fine. But I think some people have to go and things like that. So should we fast travel to Giza and do a quick
Yep.
tour there?
Yep, we will. I will do that now. Because we don't want to miss out on that.
Yeah.
It's quite a spectacular version of the site.
Yeah.
I was looking at it yesterday. I was doing a kind of test of how we were going to do this, and I started looking for the Khufu boat pits. I don't think you can see them.
Did you really?
Yeah, I don't think you
Nice.
can see them. But we can have a look.
So we're fast traveling. Are we gonna go along the causeway? Or are we gonna keep doing that plan?
Yep, we are.
Okay.
We are. So I will just run there now. Run up to the Great Pyramid. I'm going to take the boat. There's a little boat here. I'll take that across the water, and then we will go up the causeway and to the Great Pyramid.
Nice. Dramatic dive into some hay.
As
Have we
I
got
said,
time for a question while this is loading?
Pigeon houses. Are those the pigeon houses? Sorry.
yeah, they are. And
Yeah.
yes, we do have time for a question.
So Dan somewhat asked earlier whether the clothing of Cleopatra is realistic in the game. That was just an interesting point on those sorts of things.
I'm gonna say probably not. I don't know if you guys can remember. Do you want me to switch to Cleopatra so we can have a look at Cleopatra?
Could do.
Sure. Yeah.
Okay, one moment. I quite like using Biac since he's the main character, but that's not a problem. We can switch to Cleopatra. Just so that obviously Dan clearly knows what it looks like, but some of the other people watching may not. So you can choose different characters that you can run around the discovery mode as. You can just be them. You mostly can't be them in the game. There's a few that you can, but yeah, not all of them.
Chris is getting dragged in the comments. Y'all are missing it.
It got off quite lightly, in fairness.
Yeah, that's true. So my feeling is that the dress is probably not really realistic. You know, it's just meant to look nice. I mean, it's very impractical. Like, certainly for what we're about to do, it's super impractical.
Yep. As most women's superhero outfits are.
Yeah, indeed. I do actually quite like the wig though. I think it's in a weird way. I do like it, even though I do not think it's.
I have
very
not
realistic.
been here before. This is great.
So this is inside the causeway. There's this little camp. This is what someone was talking about before, where people have set kind of little camps up, which I personally do not think is unreasonable. You know, there's a bunch of mercenaries over here by the fire, and why wouldn't they use this space? No one else is using it for anything, so you know it makes sense that there could be people here doing things like this.
Yep. I mean, if there are already edifices, yeah.
Is this the Sphinx Temple?
I don't. No, the Sphinx isn't the Sphinx Temple. Or maybe it is. No, this is the funerary complex. The Khufu funerary complex. So I'm inside the temple.
Oh,
mortuary
okay,
temple,
yeah,
and I'm
okay,
about to
okay,
go up
yeah,
to
yeah.
the causeway.
Yeah, sorry. Okay.
Which I think I've gone the wrong way. That's why we're. Yes, I have.
Is that why that guy's staring at you like, what are you doing here? You went the wrong way.
Probably, yeah. It's like, woman, what are you doing? That's what he's doing.
Lady.
And have I still gone the wrong? No. Yes, I've still gone the wrong way. Okay. I think I've got confused now about where the actual entrance to the causeway is. See, this is what I didn't want to do, which is come here and be like, I don't know where anything is, and mostly I've succeeded.
No, but it's
and I have failed.
It's still great because there's so much to look at, and now you're going the right direction.
But the doors
More
are
accurate as well. I'm sure people got lost all the time.
yeah, probably.
If you've never gotten lost when you go to Egypt, have you really been to Egypt?
The This is a good point. I was right next to the exit. I was right next to the exit all along, Cat. It's just clearly failing here.
You're doing awesome.
There we go.
Yeah.
Nice.
This is obviously hard work. You'll hear the Cleopatra is starting to get a bit tired as we run up the causeway.
There we go.
Wow, this is great. This looks like that section of the Unas Causeway at Saqqara, which still has the section of roof in place. There's very, very little of the actual Khufu Causeway still there. Of course, it is visible, but you sort of need to know what you're looking at.
Yeah, and I think this is one of the nice things about this, even if it's not actually accurate. They've used something else that actually exists to create something that they don't know exactly what it was like.
Yeah,
you know, that's kind of the best that you can hope for. You know, they've used an actual example, and they've obviously taken advice from people who've gone, well, it would, we have these other examples. It would probably have been like this, because it's better to imagine and to try and recreate than to just ignore it, really. And it, in all reality, if we were there now in Cleopatra's time, it wouldn't be exactly like we have it today. So it being gone, some of it probably still would be there. So this is probably more like what it would have been than what it is now, if that makes sense. Sorry, I explained that really badly.
No, you didn't. No, I know exactly what you mean.
Yeah, me too.
Okay, wonderful. And
I do love this. This might be something super elementary to say, but I do love that they included the roofing, because what we see now, it doesn't include the roof. And so it's hard to remember that there would have been a ceiling and a roof to a lot of these places that have just fallen in over the last, 5,000 years.
Yeah, agreed. It's very much more complete than it is now. And it's obviously still in a ruined state because it is already thousands of years old, but it's already it's already in a much more, I don't want to say authentic, but more original state than what we can see now. Not just the temples that we've been running through in the causeway and everything, of course, but also the pyramids. Whilst they will be familiar to everybody, they don't look like this now.
Nope.
So shall I...
Do you want to... Sorry.
Do you want me to go in, or shall I just start the climb? We can have a talk about what we can see.
I was thinking that, and anybody can give feedback on this. Should we climb to the top, and then we can talk about what we can see from the top, just in the interest of time?
Or would you prefer to go inside? What do you guys who are still with us? What do you want to do?
Yep, we've got a choice.
I think while you think about that, I'm just going to go to the eagle view and have a little fly around so that we can.
Oh, that's a good idea.
Have a little look.
I don't know if the yes please was to going inside or if it was to going up to the top. Which a climb in this game, okay, we've got a climb please. Yes, a climb in this game is going to be very different than a climb in the Victorian period, which is what I understand. And it was basically when the limestone shear casing was gone, and you basically have kind of what you see now at the pyramids, which is gigantic blocks which were used as steps. And then people would be pushed and pulled up them to get all the way to the top.
Looks like climb is winning.
Yep, I am about to start the climb. So this is going to take me a little bit of time to get to the top. So, I don't know, Kate, do you want to maybe talk a bit about those 19th century people that did climb pyramids? Because we discussed this amongst us. ourselves, and whether or not we thought it would be a great idea or not. Would we actually climb the pyramids? And you guys both said no, and I said yes. But just to be absolutely 100% clear, do not climb them. It is not allowed.
There are signs all over the place saying don't climb them. You will be arrested and then banned from Egypt, is what I understand.
Yeah.
So you'll never be allowed to go back.
So do not try. I'm not advocating for it. It was more a question between the three of us of whether or not it's something that we thought would be fun and that we'd like to do. And yeah, they were both like, no. And I was like, yeah. Cool. I probably
I would, given the chance. I'll be honest. I mean, Chris gets all like, they're like, oh, we're gonna open this pyramid up. Chris, do you want to go inside? It's like, I think if they ever opened up climbing again, he might get the first request of, Chris, do you want to climb the pyramid? And I mean, what do you say to that?
Well, I hate to shatter any illusions, but every so often those kinds of people say things like, do you want to throw a 4x4 around the desert? And I have to say, I've hardly ever driven a car in my life. So no, I'm not the rugged adventurer that is sometimes claimed.
Well, so if we're climbing this in the Victorian era, all of this sheer limestone that is absolutely beautiful and would have made the pyramids, I believe, shine kind of white. It was basically all gone except once you get kind of closer to the top, especially on the Great Pyramid. So there would be these gigantic blocks that are probably, I don't know, 7 or 8 feet tall toward the bottom. And essentially what you would do is you would, especially as a woman, you would kind of hike up your skirts and you would be pushed from the bottom by one of the Egyptians working at the pyramids. And then you would also be pulled from the top, probably by 2 Egyptians. So if you were a Victorian lady, you'd have 3 Egyptians helping you get to the top of the pyramid. Unless you were somebody like Hilda Petrie, who was not interested in having that help, and she did it all by herself, and she was very excited about it, which she should be, because that would be a really hard climb, just doing it by yourself. And then you get to the top, and some people would go up there and have tea or just look around. I think it was made illegal sometime in the 1980s. Is that right? To climb up to the top of the pyramids.
Yeah, I can't remember the exact date, but it was yes.
It was. I mean, it's relatively recent, but people died all the time doing this. So we talk about like, wow, they were climbing to the top, but people were also falling down the pyramid a very long way. Stone, and having basically stone catch you on the way down. So that's not a comfortable fall.
No. It's not a thing that you really want to do. And yeah, I mean that at least in part is why it is banned, because it's dangerous.
Yep.
If I may ask a question of my own,
how dare you?
I know the cap on the top of the pyramid there. What's that made of?
This cap in the game, I think it is supposed to be. From the way that it's been rendered, it looks like it's stone that has been gilded. I'm not sure, but they're actually all different on each of the 3 of them in the game. So this is Khufu's pyramid. It's the Great Pyramid. So it's got this nice shiny kind of gold one. Just trying to see whether or not this is supposed to be corroded metal or stone underneath. It's kind of hard to tell. But either way, it's meant to be a gilded top. And there are stories, aren't there, of it being a solid gold cap, which probably isn't true. But I don't know.
No, that would be quite heavy
stories
to pull up there. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think. Sorry, go ahead.
The cap that's on the next pyramid along on Khafra's pyramids in the game is a granite one, and then a black granite one. And then the one that's on the far pyramid that you can't see because it's behind Khafra's pyramid at the moment where I'm looking. On Mankara's pyramid is, I think, pink granite on that one.
Ooh.
And yeah, these are just this one certainly, the gold one, is not the case. I don't know. I don't think the capstones would have been different. I mean, certainly the one you can still see at the top of Khafre's pyramid that some of the white limestone is still there. And does it go all the way up to the point? I can't remember.
Pretty much.
I think it does, doesn't it?
Pretty much.
It wouldn't have actually had a capstone. It's just that little bit that's still on the top, the white limestone, goes up into the point.
I mean, I don't know that actually. I mean, the thing is, when you look at the Great Pyramid now, from the ground, you can just about see that it's not pointy at the top. It's there's a little bit of a flat area, but in reality, that is really quite a large flat area at the top. So I say that the casing goes pretty much to the point on Khafre, but I don't know that. And certainly people did climb it. John Gardner Wilkinson, I remember being very struck to find that not only did he climb the middle pyramid, because he always looks a bit like a weakling to me. But anyway, he did climb it, and he left his name up there apparently as well. But yeah, I don't remember seeing any images of the top of it at all.
No.
Maybe if anybody's seen them, then send them in. I say send them in like we're from the 80s, but
I'm just looking at a picture of it now in this Complete Pyramids book, and actually it does look like there's a little bit shaven off the top. So there is possibly room that there would have been something up there, but what it was, I don't know the answer to that. Would it have been gold though? Probably not.
I do know from a children's book that we've been reading called Who Built the Pyramid that Senwosret's pyramid down at Dashur maybe had the black granite, didn't it, on the top?
Yes, those pyramidia that are from various pyramids, which are now preserved in the central atrium in the Egyptian Museum on Tahrir. They are of a dark hard stone. I don't think it's granite actually. I think it might be diorite.
Okay.
But they're not huge. They're not. Do you know? Do you know what I mean? They're not absolutely huge. So if that was all of it and it was missing from the ground, I reckon you'd barely notice that there wasn't a point.
Yeah.
Someone's asked in the chat as well that they've seen reconstructions like this with the grey lines around the bottom of the pyramids, and they've asked whether that was accurate.
I think you must be talking about the representation that we're looking at in the game at the moment. That's actually meant to be pink granite. I think it's that kind of colour. Certainly, you can't tell at the moment because it's dark. It's nighttime in the game. But I do not know the answer to this question. Do you know, Chris?
I don't, and actually,
down there, is there? It's all the casing is gone. So
no, exactly. I don't know either. I'm sure you're right that the lighter colour in which looks odd in this light is the white Tura limestone, and I'm sure you're right that it's meant to be granite. The casing on the lower courses of the third pyramid is granite, is red granite, pink granite.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm really just saying exactly what you said. I don't think there's any left. I'm going to get my big Giza book.
Do it.
Mine's in the other room, and I was like, "Oh, I didn't bring it in here. I've got this complete post." Anyway, it appears to be sunrise now, which is quite pretty.
I'd like to know why everybody else has a big Giza book and I don't. I need to obviously fix my collection of books.
Clearly you do.
Have a big Giza book.
I assume Chris is talking about the same one that I've got, which is like it's a very recent. Oh no, it's not. It's different. It's a paperback. I've got the one I've got's a hardback one. So yeah, I've just been kind of panning around while we're sitting up here on top of the Great Pyramid.
Yeah.
Because the landscape is just so beautifully rendered. It just honestly it blows me away every single time I look at it.
Yeah.
Because
I agree.
It's so pretty, and it includes so much. Even if it's not 100% accurate, it's trying to truly give you the feeling, of being there and of what it was like. And lots of it is accurate, and it includes lots of things that are there, like the little extra cemeteries off to the sides of the pyramids, and the different valley.
Yeah, and I love the
temples
Queen's
Sphinx
pyramids that
temple.
are there too.
Yeah, exactly. The Sphinx is down there as well, in his little kind of, the dip that he's in. He's in there.
His little nook.
Yeah, his little nook with his temple. His temple, the Sphinx temple, is there as well. So ultimately, I mean, yeah, I think they've done a really, really good job, and like I love playing this game. I think it's great, and that is really why we wanted to bring people here to see it, to get to experience it as well, because obviously we understand, not everybody can have the game, not everybody wants to buy the game, but it's certainly worth the time spent looking at it, and just even if you just want to sit there and enjoy it as a an ancient environment and just go it reminds, I think you said earlier, Kate, that it reminds you of going to Egypt. It reminds me of going to Egypt as well. So it's obviously doing something right.
Yeah, and it's also useful. I mean, Chris is using it for visuals for a project, and it is useful because it is based on historical documents and historical activity. It can be useful for this. Chris, what did you find in your big Egypt or your Giza book?
I'm just going to say goodbye to Nessie Egypt, who has been chatting to us throughout. It's got to go. So thank you very much for coming. I hope that you have enjoyed it. Go on, Chris.
Bye, Ness. Thanks for coming. What was the question? Oh yeah, the big Giza book. So it was good. The big Giza book I had in mind was Lena and Hawas's big book, but it's so big that I left it in its pile, and went for Lena's Complete Pyramids instead. And that does say that the bottom courses of casing stone on the Khafra pyramid were granite. So it says nothing about a stripe, which is what we see in the game. But yes, the two tones is apparently based on good evidence. Yeah.
Okay, great, brilliant. Something we have learned. See, so the game knew something that we couldn't remember.
Yeah. No, they're ahead of us.
They are. Mark, do you want to? Have you got some questions for us? I think maybe that would be appropriate for us to do now, and I'm going to make my way down and go inside the pyramid, because someone did actually say they would quite like to have a look inside as well, but I'll just do that while we're talking so that you can kind of view as we discuss whatever questions we've got that remain.
Okay, so the couple we've got, there's one, just a pretty simple one. Would the Egyptians travelling up and down the Nile usually have used boat or horse?
I think boat, but I don't know for sure. Boat would be the quickest way if they could afford it.
Yeah, absolutely. There were no horses in Egypt, as far as we know, until the Second Intermediate period. I think that's the feeling. So there would have been horses by this time, by the time the thing is shown in the game. But I think they were sort of for the elite. So and traveling by boat would have been quicker and easier anyway.
Yeah.
And for local journeys, donkey. As today.
Oh, the donkey! I love the donkey.
Yeah.
Great. Have any of you tried to read the glyphs in the game?
Chris does.
Yeah.
I have, and there are. I don't know if Gemma's found the same thing. I haven't looked at absolutely everything, but they're a mixture of entirely accurate and good in some cases. Good signs, but don't mean anything in other cases, and then just complete, just sort of
decorative.
Yeah.
Good interjection.
Yeah, exactly. And even the ones that are actually kind of correct in that they do in fact say something are often repeated in other places that they wouldn't be, or that they are just put in somewhere that they wouldn't be anyway.
So much like the statues, based on real things, but just scattered around.
Yeah, and a lot of the time, the statues in the game. So when we were in Alexandria, we were looking at kind of the Greco-Roman style statues, but there's also a lot of Egyptian style statues in the game too. And they will a lot of the time have some sort of Egyptian inscription on them. And the inscription, although it might be a king's name or something, that where you would expect there to be an inscription, it doesn't always say what you think it will. Sometimes, if it's placed in a place where there is a statue, a real one, you might go to look at it and find that actually the name that's on it isn't correct, because with it being a game, they have limitations. They cannot copy exactly what is there. So what they're trying to do is present to you something that's recognizably Egypt. That's kind of the aim. They want you to feel like it's Egypt, but it doesn't have to be 100% correct, because a lot of people are not going to notice anyway, and that's actually just not what they're trying to do. They're not trying to. They're not trying to create an exact version of what happened in the past. They are inserting a story which is for entertainment purposes into a historic environment and weaving them together, which is the difficult bit, and also the way that they've done it is very clever.
And I mean, it's sort of accurate for the period, right? I mean, there was a lot of stuff about hieroglyphs that the Romans didn't understand. They wanted to use the signs so that they could sort of cement their place there. So there's a lot of stuff that they just sort of made up. Isn't that right?
Some of the time.
Certainly in Rome, particularly in Rome. I mean, outside Egypt itself, Egyptianizing objects with hieroglyphs all over them often are just the inscriptions themselves are gibberish. In Egypt, though, I guess we it's much more likely that any inscriptions would have been written by people who actually understood the language and knew what they were doing. So,
okay, yeah, that's fair.
Yeah, you get. I think what you're thinking of in that instance is kind of when you get coffins that are from later periods like this. Sometimes they won't have. It still probably was created by someone who could read Egyptian, but it was maybe copied and copied and copied, and then there are mistakes and things in them, so they don't always make 100%. I think that's fair to say, right, Chris?
Yes. You're absolutely right about copying and things sometimes getting copied in a not entirely comprehending way. Yeah.
So I have gone inside the pyramid, and I've been kind of running around in circles, because this is kind of like my default sometimes when I start talking. If I'm doing this, I just run. Don't know why. But I've gone inside, and we were inside the sarcophagus chamber. And so for the game, they've added in this little kind of hole in the wall that you can go through, and then there's another chamber beyond this. And I wanted to just bring this up because this is very much for the purposes of the game, whether or not anything in here is accurate or inaccurate or anything. This was done specifically for the purposes of the game, to make the narrative work, to make it something that you could explore and kind of, because the idea of an adventure game is that you're having fun, you're having an adventure, or you're exploring, and so they wanted to include things like that. And this is very representative of what I was trying to say about them making it as like a recognizable ancient Egypt for people who are going to play this game. And if I go into the room that's just beyond that tiny room, you will see that very much in the kind of treasure hoard that is before you. This is a very stereotypical example of what might be expected from ancient Egypt, and so they wanted to include stuff like this for that audience, and to give that feeling of adventure. Statues in this room are nice, though. And it's also nice when you walk on all the treasure, it makes a kind of little crunchy nettle noise. Like you're walking on the pots and stuff, which is quite fun.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know if you want to say anything about any of the things that are in this room, Chris. Or if you just want to move on.
No, I love it. No, I love it. I haven't seen this before. I mean, certainly, I don't think anything here would have been the kind of thing that. Well, the thing is, nothing was found inside the Great Pyramid, and very, very little has been found inside any pyramid in terms of movable objects. I think it's fair to say that large stone statues like this of gods wouldn't have been found in a pyramid at this point. The decoration on the walls is not right for the period. The fact that they're all falcon-headed Horus statues seems a bit wrong. And then all the stuff that's on the ground, yeah, I mean, it's just sort of blingy stuff. There's some vases which are a known type. The cartouche is yeah, I mean, it's sort of New Kingdom, isn't it, as well?
Yeah.
Very much New Kingdom, 19th, 20th dynasty looking. And the gold, as so often, because we don't have much well, we have one really obvious source to go on when it comes to gold. The gold sort of looks vaguely like some Tutankhamun stuff. There's a chariot wheel poking out. The big shrine looks a bit kind of Tutankhamun shrine-like. That's a cartouche, I just realised, of Amenhotep III, isn't it? There.
The one up on the wall?
Yeah.
Yeah. But yes, that's kind of why I was looking at it. This goes back to what I said before. Sometimes the things that are written, even if they are correct, like actually make sense, wouldn't be where you find them. But
yeah.
I just,
I mean, it's a nice sort of blingy mishmash of stuff, but
yeah. It is, but it does the job that it's supposed to do, and to be fair to them, they have gone on the only example that we have of a kind of complete burial like that. Oh well, almost only. Most well known. Let's say most well known.
Yeah, and it's fun. It's fun too. I got no problem with it.
Yeah, agreed.
Nope.
It's fun. And I like the way as well. We're not doing the tour. We're not really going to speak about this, but I like the way that they've added this room or this section on. So they've almost gone, this is the bit that we've copied that's supposed to be accurate, and this is the side bit which is for the game. And then when you do this in the Discovery Tour, they explain why they made these choices to include stuff like this, and they explain about other theories about how the pyramids were built and why they've included that in the game. Not because it's, we know this is the answer, but because they wanted that adventure and idea, and this worked really well with that. Which it's fine because that's what the game's about.
Yeah, it's fine. I think it's totally fine. But I mean, again, very responsible of them to sort of have explained that. I mean, it's almost as though they were worried about what Egyptologists might think. I mean, who cares what a couple of hundred Egyptologists in the world might think. But they, I mean, for them to have gone to that level of trouble, is amazing.
It's because they know, Chris, that we're moaners. Anyway, so I'm going to take us back outside now, and I think we should wrap up so that everyone can kind of get on with eating dinner or going to bed or having lunch or whatever it is for wherever you are, whatever time it is. But I do just want to make sure that if we have any further questions, people get the chance to ask them while we're still here.
So there's one that's just would chariots have been used during the period of the pyramids?
No.
Yes, exactly.
Great, thank you. So Dan has asked, well, he's just said there are a lot of spider webs. I'm guessing there weren't actually spiders in the pyramids.
Ooh.
I don't know, actually.
I don't like to think about desert bugs.
I mean,
Probably.
I would have thought they probably were.
Yeah.
In as much as there are little things like that everywhere. Yeah. So I would think probably there were, but not the kind of Indiana Jones type terrifying spiders.
Yeah. I think this is all for the ambience of the game. Let's say, again, creating an adventure sort of thing with lots of scary things. Because there's also snakes inside. I don't know if anyone noticed when we were inside the Step Pyramid of Djoser, there were snakes in there, there were cobras, and if we were playing the game, we have to fight them, which is relatively easy. But in the game, with
alligators over by the colossal Memnon.
Yes.
One other question that's less about Egypt, but do game developers generally consult historians, Egyptologists, or archaeologists during the development of games to ensure historical accuracy?
For the Assassin's Creed franchise, yes, they do. For other games, I'm not 100% sure how much they do. Certainly they do a little bit. They will always ask people so that they know, they don't necessarily want to create something 100% realistic, but they do want you to engage with it in, what it's supposed to be. So if it's supposed to be ancient Egypt, then they have to get enough of it right for you to feel like that's what it is. So they will always do their research. Same as authors, writing fiction, they will always also do their research. They will include things that are part of the narrative more than part of the kind of the historical background. But yeah, the answer basically to that is yes, they do. It's to varying degrees, and definitely for Assassin's Creed, they are included in the credits, so we do know who consulted on the game. I'm not sure about the Discovery Tour. I don't know if they separated it out, because I think they talked to more people to create the Discovery Tour, because they have so much more in it. Like they actually there are sections in the Discovery Tour where there are objects that you can go and look at, like the Rosetta Stone is one of them, and you can go up to it and look at it, and it tells you about it. So they would have needed to consult with people who knew about specific things. But I don't know where the information is about that, about who they talked to for those things. So yeah, I hope that answers the question.
One more in the chat. There's a lot of building debris, ropes, etc. lying around. Is that accurate, or would the builders have left it clean and tidy?
Can I answer that one?
Yeah.
I think it's a really good question, and I guess it's maybe sort of comes from the fact that it looks like it might be a bit wrong, and you might assume that these wonderful things would have been nicely finished and all clean and tidy, and I think that's quite a common way of imagining things, and actually it's quite common for things to be reconstructed like that too. But my feeling is that, well, and I think this is pretty well attested by the evidence as well. Actually, no, I think it's probably right. A lot of these places would have been in a more or less constant state of construction, repair, decay, rebuilding. Do you know what I mean? So, a lot of these places, often when you see reconstructions, you see them as if they were finished, and it didn't really work like that. And also, I mean, this is conjecture, but Egypt in modern times is like that. It's more or less in a constant state of construction, repair, dismantling, rebuilding. And I kind of like to think that might be the sort of thing, there's no way of proving it, that might just have survived. So I suspect that that's bang on. And that the idea of things being really tidy and things being cleared up is actually our idea of how things should have been, but doesn't really match what we know about what it was like in the past and what Egypt's like now. Too. So I think they're bang on actually.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
While you were talking, I decided to make my way over to the temple that's got the procession so that we can have a look at the procession. We don't need to talk about it, but we can just appreciate how lovely it is.
We can also, during this time, maybe even talk about how we are thinking about doing some more of these tours, to highlight things like what John is saying. I'm a civil engineer, so I notice these things. So we were talking about doing other tours like technologies and architecture and the afterlife and that sort of thing. So we'll be talking about that as a group, and then sort of advertising that as they come about. So hopefully people are interested in that as well.
Yeah, so it's that's kind of a watch this space sort of thing for the moment. But yeah, we are very much interested in using it to explore specific topics. So obviously what we've done today is taken you to some big sites that you will all have heard of, that you know. Some of you may have been to them, and so just to kind of get a feel for what the game's like and what sort of things you can see in it. But there are so many things in it. You know, it's filled with detail absolutely everywhere. I mean, we could probably spend quite some time talking about just this procession that we're looking at now, and like what this is about, what this means. I think that they're just kind of standing here because we're in the discovery tour part of the game, but when you're in the actual game, they move, so they go towards the temple with the sacred bark, and they play the instruments, they do the incense sensing as they're walking. I mean, the fan bearers are going, but they just obviously always are going. And the priest will lead the procession, and then when you reach the point at the end of the temple, the priest turns round and he starts talking. So it's quite an interesting thing just to watch. I have literally, whilst playing the game, just sat there and watched it go by.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's great. It really is great. I think is it a thoth baboon in there? I think it might be. So yeah, have we got any more questions, Mark? Shall we wrap up?
The last one is just at Crocodilopolis, there's a sacred domestic crocodile. Is it real?
Yeah, I think they did have crocodiles in or at least they had animals in the temples. I don't know if they did have a crocodile, but they definitely had animals in later periods. Or have I made that up, Chris?
No, you're right. They I think. No, crocodiles are attested. I think yes. The other best known, most famous one is the Apis bull.
Yes.
And you can go and see the very Apis bull in the Temple of Memphis in the game as well. So
wow, that's cool.
Yeah, you can. Yeah, I was thinking about, there is a at the British Museum there is a very large crocodile mummy. She is almost 3 meters long, and I know this because I had to move it, and it was very heavy and it was very difficult. We took it to be CT scanned when I used to be a member of staff there, and I was just thinking that there is something about that on the catalogue about it possibly being a kind of almost domesticated one, but I don't know whether or not that's true. It might just be that someone's written in the catalogue, this might be this. I can't quite remember, but it was interesting, and you can indeed go and see.
There's a lot of that stuff in museum catalogues, I feel like.
Yes, I know. I'm very wary of them these days.
Yeah.
All right. Shall we sign off then? Let everybody get back to their day.
That sounds like a good idea.
Yeah. Okay. Brilliant. Well, thank you. We definitely don't have any more questions to address, do we, Mark?
No, I think that's everything.
Brilliant. Thank you everybody for coming. I hope that you have enjoyed the tour, and I hope that you will join us for some of the others. We will be talking about it on our various social medias, and we will potentially also be asking you about things that you might actually want to learn about specifically, because if we're going to do specific topics, then we would like it to relate to things that you actually want to know about. So yeah, stay tuned, watch this space for that, and thanks everybody for coming. Have a good day.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.